The offensive line is the biggest question mark on the Green Bay Packers offense, but is there real worry there?
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you find podcasts, you will find Locked On Packers, the #1 Packers podcast on the internet. And the show for fans who know what happened. They want to know why and how. Thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. We hope you like starting your day with us as much as we like starting our day with you. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Make every moment more as the playoffs finish up. Well, they're finished up. The sports stop sportsing the way we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with boosts or bonuses daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Where is this concern over the Packers offensive line coming from? I was listening to a show the other day and they were talking about, the Packers, they've got kind of an average, maybe slightly below average offensive line. And then that same group of people were like, the Bears, they've got an average to above average offensive line. Based on what? Okay, let me take a breath. There was a Pro Football Focus list, the top 10 offensive lines in the league. The Jets had a bottom 5 offensive line last year. Okay, they were ravaged by injuries. They signed Tyron Smith and Morgan Moses. Elijah Vera Tucker is coming back from injury, but Elijah Vera Tucker is coming back from an Achilles tear. Pretty bad, pretty hard to do. They're signing Tyron Smith into his age 34 season, coming off a 4-year stretch where he played 30 total football games. And Morgan Moses is 33. An offensive line that has had no time together. There were multiple teams on that Pro Football Focus list that had multiple rookies expected to start. My suspicion is that because the Packers lost David Bakhtiari, everyone's priors from the draft, which were wrong then and are wrong now, say, they're relying on a rookie, which of course doesn't hold weight when you have these lists where multiple rookies are expected to start. Jordan Morgan is probably not going to play tackle for the Green Bay Packers. Rasheed Walker, the guy who replaced David Bakhtiari, by the way, in week 2, now he was a part of a platoon with Yosh Nijman, but over the course of the season was second in ESPN's pass block win rate. The Packers were second as a team in pass block win rate. Just because you don't know how good Zach Tom is, just because you forgot how good Elton Jenkins was, just because you failed to notice Rasheed Walker at the end of the year turning into one of the best pass blocking young offensive tackles in football, just because you didn't realize that Zach Tom and Rasheed Walker form one of the best young offensive tackle duos in football, just because you missed all of that, doesn't mean this team isn't very good. And of course, I'm not speaking to Packers fans because Packer fans know this. It's everyone else who's getting this wrong. And I know that's a convenient thing to say. It reeks of homerism. No, you don't get it. Only we do here, the people that follow this every day, except it's very obvious that is happening right now. The Packers were second as a team in pass block win rate, according to ESPN's charting, 16th in run block win rate. So an average run blocking group and an elite pass blocking group. The only group better was the Eagles, who are going to have 2 new starters along their offensive line this season. Even with all of the turnover, Zach Tom playing right tackle for the first time in his NFL career as a preferred starter. Rasheed Walker and Yosh Nijman in a platoon. Ultimately, Rasheed Walker wins that job. And for the first few weeks, I'm going, why? That's how well it was going. At the end of the year, John Runyan Jr. and Sean Ryan are in a platoon, which we found out was partially because Jon Runyan Jr. was hurt. He told us that at Super Bowl in our interview with him. And Sean Ryan was giving him some breathers. They were rotating so it would help JRJ make it through some of these games. Elgton Jenkins played at a Pro Bowl level. And Josh Myers was Josh Myers. Okay, Josh Myers isn't fixed. But even if the line is the same with Sean Ryan in it, that group played a lot of snaps together last year, and they were, by any measure you want to use, a top 10 offensive line last year, with all of the weirdness that comes with a first-time starter at quarterback, all of the receiver stuff, injuries at running back, Matt LaFleur the first time calling this version of the offense, and guys in and out of the lineup all year. That's what happened, and they were still good. It's like the Jordan Love thing. He produced at a high level in year one with the youngest skill group ever, all those things that I rattle off like I'm like, Daenerys Targaryen is walking into the room and I have to say, all of the titles, all of those caveats apply to this offensive line too. And they were still an elite, especially pass blocking group. One of the essential things about offensive line play is continuity matters more than maybe any other position. You can create chemistry kind of on the fly with a new quarterback. You can add new players into a secondary. And if everyone's doing their job, you're okay. Defensive line, not a problem. Linebackers, there's some communication stuff, linebackers, safeties that you have to be able to do. But overall, continuity is not essential. Offensive line continuity is vital in the play of your group. And the Packers have it. And that's before even including Jordan Morgan. You bring in Jordan Morgan, and it is true, most rookies are bad. I've often said that. I still say that. But he's only going to play if he's an upgrade over what they already have. He's only going to play right guard if he's better than Sean Ryan. He's only going to play left guard if he's good enough to be an upgrade really over Josh Myers, right? Because you're going to move Elgton Jenkins to center. He's going to be just as good at center as he was at guard, if slightly less valuable. And then you're going to bring in Jordan Morgan. Well, if Jordan Morgan is a net positive over what Josh Myers was giving them at center, Elgton Jenkins is giving you what he was giving you at guard essentially, you're better. Now, you don't have the continuity, but you have more talent, and then you have the continuity elsewhere. What is the problem? And I think this stems from people who didn't pay attention all year to this Packers team until the very end. And they remember the fourth quarter, by the way, when Zach Tom was hurt in San Francisco, because before then, they had no problem with Nick Bosa and all those pass rushers that they had acquired at the deadline. And now Eric Armstead's not there anymore until Zach Tom got hurt. This group last year in the second half, they kept Jordan Love clean in like every game. And the ball was coming out on time and in rhythm, and everything was great. This was the best quarterback in the league last year in the second half. Worst case, he was one of the top 2 or 3 quarterbacks in the league. And one of the big reasons was this offensive line came together. They coalesced. And now you've added talent to it. You've added depth to it. You have a plan that if your worst player, based on what we've seen anyway, we don't know about Sean Ryan long term. You have a plan to replace Josh Myers, the guy who has been the most inconsistent piece over the last handful of seasons. And I'm supposed to expect they're not going to be a really good offense again? That the Jets offensive line with all these new pieces, like they're better? The Steelers with all these new pieces, they're rookies, they're going to be better. Like, give me a break. That's not how this works. Now, I have enjoyed the straw man, because that's what it seems like it is to me. This is more of a confirmation of priors. Oh, here, the Packers weren't that good last year. We thought they were going to stink, we being the national media. We thought they were going to stink, and actually, we were right, and so we're going to try and wrap all of those takes up into future projections so we don't look stupid and say, well, they were not as good as we thought or as you thought at the end of the year. Oh, it was a mirage. Actually, going into this season, their offensive line is not good. Or it's average. Except there's no reason it would be average. At least not by projections. Like injuries could make it average. You lose Zach Tom. Yeah, you're going to have some problems. But maybe Jordan Morgan, you just slide him out to right tackle and problem solved. Put Josh Myers back in at center, Elgton Jenkins back in at left guard. If that's the way that this ultimately shakes out. There's solutions. They have much better depth now. Much more experience now. It doesn't make sense. Except if you're trying to confirm priors. But I thought it would be an interesting exercise to steelman some of these arguments. The case against the Packers. What is the best case against them? We'll do that next on Locked On Packers. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at BetterHelp. Comparison is the thief of joy. It's something that I say all the time in my daily life. I say it to seemingly everyone in my life because we are doing this constantly. We are constantly comparing ourselves to others. I do it. I have to tell myself on a daily basis, stop doing this. You look at Instagram, you see on Facebook, you see other people because they only post the best stuff. No one's posting the real stuff, or very few people are. Therapy can help you focus on what you want instead of what others have so you can start living your best life. BetterHelp can get you there. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Stop comparing and start focusing with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. What's the steelman argument against the Green Bay Packers in 2024? I'll tell you in a second, but are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all the shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So this was born out of the offensive line discussion because I thought, okay, there are these arguments that will be made. And I think in order to be ready for that, to get you ready to have those discussions with your buddies, with your friends at work about what this is going to look like and what it might not look like potentially, it would be good to get into, okay, what are the actual reasons for concern or the actual worst case scenarios, but in a likely situation. So the best case against the Packers. Well, the best case against the Packers starts with Jordan Love. Small sample size. The league's got the book on him. That would be if there were a good case there, and I don't think there is. That's it. Now, it's not just small sample size. I think it is more just the steelman version of this is he's still got to prove it. He still has to prove it in the playoffs against the best teams. Like all the Shanahan tree teams eat up the Cowboys. But the 49ers are the big bad in the NFC. Let's see you prove it in a situation like that. Let's see Matt LaFleur. Let's see you in a big game prove it like that. I think the let's see you prove it after years and years of coming up short. By the way, this is one of the cases against the 49ers too. One of the best cases. Hey guys, you have failed habitually to win the big game. Now, maybe if Patrick Mahomes doesn't exist, they've got 2 rings already, but sometimes that happens. You face all-time great players. There's always all-time great players that you have to try and beat. Luckily for the Packers, right now in the NFC, they don't have anyone as currently understood to be an all-time great. The only guys like that, or even close to that, are in the AFC. It's Aaron Rodgers. It's Patrick Mahomes. We'll see on Josh Allen. We'll see on Joe Burrow. We'll see on Lamar Jackson. We'll see on Justin Herbert. Like, none of those guys really exist in the NFC. And they've beaten Matthew Stafford before. Like, that part is not a worry. The rest of the Steelman argument goes, why do we believe in the defense? Why do we believe a new defensive coordinator will do any better than the old new defensive coordinator? The Packers already did this dance, and that team had more proven talent on it. You bring in Joe Barry, you still had Adrian Amos. In 2021, you had Devondre Campbell playing at an all-pro level. Zadarius Smith was technically on that team. And sure, Joe Barry, not a great coach, but Joe Barry was not a great coach. Matt LaFleur hired that guy too. So why would we have faith in him hiring a new defensive coordinator? Why did he look at the Dallas Cowboys game and the Packers absolutely lighting up Dan Quinn and going, yeah, a guy who wants to play cover 3 and cover 1 and relies on pressure? Why would we ever think that guy would be better? Because that's who the Packers hired. Jeff Hafley is a cover 3, cover 1 pressure defensive coordinator. Now, there's a lot of other parts to this, and so it's not quite that simple, but this is the case that will be made. And then, okay, there's no number 1 receiver. How, on 3rd and 8 in a playoff game, who are you going to throw the ball to? Who is going to get open? Against the best defenses, against the best secondaries, against teams that have real corners that can get into the jerseys of your guys, redirect them, throw off the timing, and make you just go win one-on-one. Who is that guy going to be? I don't know. There's some compelling stuff in there. Now, I would have responses in every case as to why I think that there is a good case against what they're saying. But there is a strong way to frame it if you want to. I think there are answers. Now, Jeff Hafley, like, we got to see it, man. We got to see it. With some of these young players on defense, we got to see it. On offense, you know, the Matt LaFleur stuff in the playoffs, you got to beat Kyle Shanahan. And until you do, that is going to be a question. Jordan Love, it is a small window, 1 year of play total. You got to prove it. And look, Justin Herbert's got to prove it. Joe Burrow's kind of got to reprove it. Lamar Jackson's got to prove it. Dak Prescott's got to prove it. Jalen Hurts, like, this is not unique to Jordan Love. Until you do it, you've got to prove it. That's the way the world works. So we'll see if the Packers have some answers. Now, my answer to who you're going to throw it to it on 3rd and 6 when you absolutely need it, it's the open guy. That's the beauty of this offense. I'm just going to load up on Devontae Adams because I know on 3rd and 6, that's who they want to throw the ball to. No, you got to cover Romeo Doubs. You got to cover Christian Watson. You got to cover Dontavian Wicks. You got to cover Jaden Reed. You're going to have to cover Josh Jacobs. You got to cover Luke Musgrave, Tucker Kraft, whoever they have in the game. You're going to have to cover all those guys. That's the fun part of this offense. All right, we're going to finish up today. We're going to make the Steelman argument for the Packers. We just did it against. Let's do it for them. We'll do that next on Locked On Packers. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. I love sports. I love sports so much. I love them so much, I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games. And the sports aren't sportsing like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And in the summer, that means golf. I love to bet on golf. We got through the big majors, but we still got the Open Championship coming up. We got the FedEx Cup, East Lake. Plenty of fun to be had. Told you the other day, I'm going to start betting on the WNBA. Excited to do that. Dig into those numbers. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available on the free Fire TV channels app. The Packers are going to be really good this year because they have one of the best infrastructures in the sport. Brian Gutekunst has proven a willingness to follow the Ted Thompson model as a draft and develop organization, while also adding in the best versions of Ron Wolf, where you judiciously add in free agency in key spots on guys who can make a big difference when you spend a lot of money. They nailed the quarterback thing. Jordan Love has the potential to be one of the 2 or 3 best quarterbacks in the league. In the second half of last season, that's exactly what he was. And the reason that that's what he was is because of development. Not because he got hot, not because of anything out of the ordinary. There were things that he struggled with early in the season that got better, and they got better because of the receivers. Now, that's just not a take. Watch the tape. The Packers had some better plans on how to attack defenses. Matt LaFleur gained more confidence in Jordan Love, and therefore they were able to call the offense differently. And when you look at some of the metrics, you go, okay, he was a much better deep ball passer. Well, part of that is he's not just throwing 50-50 balls on, seam routes in the slot to Jaden Reed, or heaves down Christian Watson's down there. Christian Watson's down there somewhere. No, these were dialed up play action shot plays on core concepts for the Packers that they trusted those guys to go win. That's the difference. Over the course of the season, their play improved. Occam's razor says the most likely reason for that improvement is improvement, not non-sticky numbers. Because, as I mentioned earlier, there is actually a correlation with pressure rates. I mentioned that the other day on Locked On Packers. That it's not as sticky as clean pocket numbers. But it's not random. You can have a random good stretch, but it is not overall a random statistic. It's not as sticky as how you perform from a clean pocket. And from a clean pocket in the second half of the year, Jordan Love was an elite quarterback with the deepest skill group in the league. Going into year 2, this was the youngest offensive skill group in the history of the modern NFL last year. You got younger at running back. You got deeper at running back. Your tight ends in year 2. The continuity we talked about at the top of the show with the offensive line, that is better now. You already proved you can beat the best teams in the league. You beat Detroit last year. You beat Kansas City last year. You blew a game against the 49ers when you had them beat. You can beat that team. By the way, the Packers, that version of the Packers, I would argue, played as well as any version of the Packers against a Kyle Shanahan team in the playoffs. And so you look at the biggest criticisms for this team. Okay, Jeff Hafley, we don't know what that's going to be, but anything is going to be better than Joe Barry. Anything. Just like the odds say this was the worst run defense in the league basically since Joe Barry took over. That's not going to be the case. You've got too much talent. You add Xavier McKinney. You bring in Edgerrin Cooper. You bring in your two of you, Lucas Van Ness, Javon Bullard, all these safeties. year 2 of Carl Brooks, of Kobe Wooden, of Carrington Valentine. We expect a step forward for at least some of these players. We talked about, this case against regression a couple months ago, that in order for the Packers as a team to regress, you would need so many young players, all in harmony, to regress for reasons that no one can articulate. Make the case why they're going to regress. Because you can't just say, well, in year 2, sometimes there's a sophomore slump. That's true, but their whole team is in year 2. So are all of them going to slump? That seems pretty unlikely. And just statistically speaking, it is. This team is going to be better than the one last year. And does that mean they're going to win the Super Bowl? No, but they're going to be better. And if they're better from a 9-7 team that blew a couple games late because they couldn't get stops, including the divisional round, you get marginal better offensive play. Let's say you get marginally better kicking game from Anders Carlson. Let's say he makes 2 more kicks. Maybe they beat Denver and they beat San Francisco. Who knows? You get marginally better defensive play, 1 or 2 more stops. All of a sudden, it's a 10-win team. All you have to do is stop Tommy Cutlets one time. Jeff Hafley, I promise you, Jeff Hafley is not getting scored on by Tommy DeVito. And now they're a 10-win team, and it's not weird at all to project them to be an NFC contender. It's not. But this is my point. It's not, even given the current information that we have. It's not weird, because they are a good team. They were a good team last year, and they will be a good team this year too. All right, back tomorrow. Like I said, we have a modified schedule this week. We're going to do 4 shows. There will be a show on the 4th. It will come out the 4th in the morning. You can watch it, listen to it all weekend, and then we'll be back on Monday with more shows. But next week, we're only doing 3 shows because I will be with family. I'll be out of town. So still plenty more to get you ready for training camp and our top 90 series. That's going on right now in the Leap. There'll be a new one tomorrow on Wednesday and then on Friday as well. We're counting down the 90 best players on the Packers because it's list season, but we thought we'd make something that you actually care about. And it's actually a good list because we actually, me and Jason, know ball. Unlike some of the people making these lists, very clearly, they don't watch tape. They just don't know. They just don't know. It's not their fault. Well, it's kind of their fault. Back tomorrow. Much more here on Locked On Packers. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast, Locked On Packers, wherever you are on social medias, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. We are here for you, Locked On Packers, so you can stay Locked On Packers.